Chapter 1904. A wild night banquet. Zhang Yi believed that the Spear of Longinus was most likely stored beneath the commander's residence. However, without a detailed topographical map, it was indeed impossible to infiltrate it easily. Don't worry, we will still have the opportunity to go there later. We can take the opportunity to investigate when the banquet begins. Time passed quickly while they waited. The commander loves East Guangdong cuisine after all, and it's been a while since he's had some. With a new cook who's also quite good, of course he has to enjoy himself. So the next afternoon, Choi Jae drove to Zhang Yi's place with his men. Upon seeing Choi Jae, Zhang Yi put on a flattering expression. "Commander, what can I do for you?" Choi Jae entered the room and casually looked around. When he saw certain marks on the bedsheets and sofa, he nodded with satisfaction. He then said to Zhang Yi, "The commander is holding a dinner party tonight. As the chef, you need to go there early to prepare the food. Remember, make it authentic Eastern Guangdong cuisine." With that, he took a note out of his pocket and handed it to Zhang Yi. Zhang Yi took it and almost couldn't help but twitch at the corner of his mouth. It read, "Dragon, tiger, and phoenix, steamed waterfish, braised rabbit head, fried frog, and braised beef tongue, among other delicacies." The commander's tastes are truly extraordinary. Once a person gets used to a good life and eats all kinds of delicacies, they will crave the unusual. Zhang Yi said unemotionally, "Are the ingredients ready? When I cook, I must use the freshest ingredients." Choi Jae raised his glasses. "We will prepare all the ingredients, so you don't need to worry." It seems that because of the previous example of Hyun Hase's defection, Choi Jae did not let Zhang Yi choose the ingredients himself. Zhang Yi didn't mind, because he didn't have to eat any of it anyway. So he was led downstairs by Choi Jae's subordinates, while Choi Jae called over the young black woman and asked her in a low voice, "Have you noticed anything wrong with him?" The black woman looked bashful. "His problems are huge." Choi Jae's brows furrowed, and the black woman's smile blossomed like a flower. "I have never had such a pleasant experience. He is like a crazy lion, completely conquering me." Choi Jae's face looked a little strange. "So powerful?" He couldn't help but mutter. However, this also dispelled some of his doubts about Zhang Yi. After all, it seems that Zhang Yi perfectly fits the 2 points of being greedy for money and lustful. The more a person has these problems, the more trustworthy they are, because such a person will not put their life at risk. Zhang Yi got into the car, but this time, the curtains in the car were not completely drawn. They had already arrived in Prison City, and there was no need to prevent him from seeing the road, as he could not escape like Hyun Hae-soo in the future. Sure enough, an hour or so later, they boarded the ship and then set foot on the island. The island looked even more extraordinary during the day. Zhang even felt that his own Tianhai fortress was not as luxurious as this, because Commander Sane really brought the words of extreme extravagance to the fullest. He collected the resources of the entire KG kingdom just for his own enjoyment. When cooking, there were also special people guarding the side. Zhang Yi did not show any abnormalities. He would not do anything during the day. It was not until the evening, after the dinner began, and the commander and the upper-class figures from Prison City who attended the meeting had gotten drunk, that Mu Yen was allowed to lead the others to infiltrate the official residence in a shadowy manner and conduct a search. Nothing special happened throughout the afternoon. As Choi Jae had said, Commander Sane usually did not wake up until midnight. This was important information for Zhang Yi. In the future, he would have to avoid this time frame when going out. It wasn't until after 10 o'clock at night that the entire island began to liven up. Those invited to the dinner party were all upper-class figures from Prison City, each wearing magnificent military uniforms or suits, accompanied by beautiful women or some very large yachts, from which came enchanting women who wore skirts that revealed their thighs, even in the cold. Zhang Yi saw many familiar faces inside, all of them the bigwigs and showgirls he had seen at the nightclub in the inner city last night. These people were waiting early in the venue, and the dishes prepared by Zhang Yi were almost ready. They were placed in a special refrigerator and were ready to be served when the banquet began. Once again, they had to wait until after 1 a.m. Zhang Yi was about to lose patience. Half a day had passed in this way, and there was nothing he could do here to play with his smart device. The secret agent monitoring him next to him didn't chat with him much either, and he was bored to death. Finally, he received the order to serve the food. Zhang Yi took a few helpers and personally pushed the food on a cart to the banquet hall. It was magnificent here, with bright lights and incredibly ornate decorations, but the style seemed a bit tacky to Zhang Yi. It was decorated with large amounts of gold, giving it a strong sense of nouveau riche. Compared to his huge manor, the difference in class was more than a little. Aesthetically, he was far inferior to the likes of Prince Wang from back then, or the girls like Zhou Ku nowadays. The commander sat lazily in his chair, accepting a bottle of Remy Martin from the waiter and drinking it down in large gulps in a rude manner. Everyone was waiting for the commander's orders. These people are like NPCs. Their purpose in attending the banquet is not to have fun, it is to accompany the commander in having fun. They only accompany the commander in having fun if they like what he likes and what he wants to do. Their own thoughts do not exist at all, and no one dares to get really drunk. The commander saw Wu Yanzu standing respectfully nearby and smiled. He reached out to him and said, "Chef Wu, this is the first time you've come to one of my dinners. Do you know that I always prepare a special gift for everyone who comes to my house for the first time?" Zhang Yi had heard about the commander's bad taste from Haiyan Haisu. Pretending to be flattered, he said, "Are you going to give me a reward?" The greedy look made Commander laugh out loud. He liked greedy people. If someone didn't smoke, drink, or lust after money or women, then that person must have some other terrible agenda. "Something better than money," he said, gesturing to the guards behind him. No one in the banquet hall said a word as they watched Zhang Yi and the commander, a somewhat hair-raising scene. Soon, the security guards led a donkey over with a bundle of red flowers tied to its head. Zhang Yi frowned. Did he want to eat donkey meat today? But they didn't have to bring the ingredients now. Zhang Yi thought for a moment and asked, "Commander, do you want to eat donkey meat sashimi?" Commander Sane suddenly raised his voice. "Wu, how can this donkey be used for food? This is such a waste." He called Zhang Yi over to the side and whispered in his ear with a wicked grin, "When I was doing business in eastern Guangdong, they taught me a special way to play, called patting the donkey's bottom." Zhang Yi had a face full of question marks. He had heard of flattery, but never of donkey patting. At that moment, in shadow space, Hyun Heise's voice was transmitted directly to Zhang Yi's brain via electronic signal. "Holy cow! Mr. Zhang, this guy is trying to scam you. It's over, it's over, it's over." Zhang Yi's head was a little confused. Although he didn't know what was going on, he could sense that it was going to be bad. The others in the banquet hall didn't look like they knew what was about to happen either, all curiously watching the two men and the donkey. Commander Sane appreciated Zhang Yi's look of complete ignorance of what was about to happen. He laughed. "This so-called patting the donkey on the butt is natural, you understand?" Zhang Yi was silent. Everyone present was also silent. The faces of Choi Che and the other members of the Imperial Guard were expressionless, as if they were used to the commander's eccentricities. But deep down, they were all thinking, "Holy shit." Zhang Yi admitted that in his 30 years of life, he had rarely experienced anything like this. Even when he repeatedly jumped between life and death, he had never been in a state like this. His brain had simply shut down. A complete shutdown. Seeing the bewildered face of the Wu Yinju in front of him, who had directly turned to stone, the commander laughed happily. He slapped Zhang Yi directly on the butt and said with a stern face, "Why, I specially let you experience this special form of entertainment. Don't you want to?" Zhang Yi came back to his senses and turned his neck as stiff as a robot. His face turned white, really white. At this moment, an impulse arose in his mind. "No more pretending. I'll fight you to the death." Although he had considered that lurking was hard work and that he might have to pay a price if necessary, this was something Zhang Yi could never accept. At this moment, not only Zhang Yi could not accept it, but also his teammates in the shadow space, who had all collectively fallen into a daze. Suddenly, Yang Xinxin was the first to react. Her voice, which was unusual for her, trembled as she shouted at Zhang Yi, Brother, don't ever agree to it." She couldn't imagine her favorite and most admired brother Zhang Yi marrying a donkey. Zhang Yi's mind was in a complete mess at this point. His expression made Commander Sane very happy. His favorite thing was to tease others and see them make a fool of themselves. "Hey, Chef Wu, what are you waiting for? Are you trying to reject my kindness?" Commander Sane said with a stern face. Zhang Yi was caught in a dilemma. First and foremost, the most important thing was that he absolutely could not pat the donkeys, but right now, in Commander Sane's territory, the price of directly confronting the commander would be extremely heavy. Even today, he was not sure if he could confront Commander Sane here. The commander's residence is definitely the area where his power is the strongest. Zhang Yi is confident that he can escape from him, but he is not sure that he can kill him. If the enemy is alerted, then it will be even more difficult to obtain the Spear of Longinus. By that time, all efforts will be in vain. No matter which result, Zhang Yi does not want to face it. Zhang Yi's mind is racing, and he has always been quick-witted. If you want to solve a problem, the best way is to solve the person who asked the question. What is Commander Sane's purpose in asking him to do this? First, to test whether he is a spy. Second, to simply enjoy teasing him. Of these two things, the second possibility is more likely. Because according to the commander's character, as long as he has doubts about someone, he can simply take action without needing to investigate. Time was running out for Zhang Yi, and his mind was racing as he finally found a way to the problem at hand. He deliberately put on a miserable look and bent over, rubbing his lower back. "Commander, how could I possibly refuse your kindness? It's just that the beauty you gave me last night was too amazing. When I got up this morning, my legs were weak, and now I'm powerless." Zhang Yi knew very well what kind of mentality Commander Sane had. A tyrant who holds all the power in his hands likes to tease others for fun, and what he wants to see most is the sight of others submitting and making fools of themselves in front of him. And for a man, what could be more humiliating than admitting in public that he is unable to get an erection? Sure enough, once Zhang Yi had said those words, the entire audience burst out laughing. Even Commander Sane was so amused that he tilted his neck back and laughed heartily. Looking at his exposed neck, Zhang Yi really had the urge to swing his sword and watch his head fly off. Of course, Choi Jae passed on the words of the woman beside Zhang Yi to Commander Sane. So he knew that Zhang Yi wasn't lying, and because of this, he pulled a donkey just to deliberately ridicule Zhang Yi and make him look like a fool on the spot. You have to know that this donkey was also specially selected by him from the farm. Zhang Yi scoffed, touching the back of his head. He didn't have any filter for a strong man, and it was his style to be able to bend and stretch. After Commander Sane finished laughing, he pointed at Zhang Yi and said, "You really are a glutton. I thought you weren't having enough fun today, so I picked a good match for you." The laughter in the crowd still didn't stop. They all laughed louder than Commander Sane in order to please him. And once one person started laughing, the others laughed even louder in competition with each other. It was like a bunch of clowns. Commander Sane stopped laughing, and many others followed suit, except for one officer who had laughed too hard and couldn't stop. Commander Sane glanced at him, and a flash of disgust crossed his eyes. He glanced again at the donkey with the big red flower in its ear and said to the officer, "Since Chef Wu is not feeling well today, so you may have this donkey as a reward." Major Che Taiyuan. The eyes of the banquet hall immediately fell on Che Taiyuan, and everyone subconsciously drew away from him, their eyes full of schadenfreude and sympathy. Che Taiyuan had been smiling for a long time, and suddenly found that he had become surrounded by a vacuum, and everyone had stopped smiling and was looking at him. He froze for a moment, not knowing what had happened. Choi Jae stepped forward and said loudly, "Major Che Taiyuan, the commander has bestowed this donkey upon you, so that you may replace Chef Wu in giving the donkey a pat on the behind. Now, be grateful for the commander's kindness." Che Taiyuan froze in place, his laughter abruptly ceasing. His face turned even paler than a corpse in an instant. Visibly, his face went from red to white in an instant. He was truly a master of face-changing. He opened his mouth, but couldn't say a word, because everyone knew that the commander's words could never be disobeyed. Otherwise, there was only one outcome waiting for him. A guard led the donkey over and placed it in the middle of the banquet hall. The people around him formed a large circle, looking at Che Taiyuan and the donkey with cold, mocking expressions. Major Che, let's begin. Zhang Yi stared at the senior officer, wanting to see if this man could bear such an insult. After a moment, all expression left his face, and his eyes became as still as dead water.
Clang.
He unfastened his brass knuckles and walked stiffly behind the donkey. Zhang Yi watched him as he did the unthinkable in front of dozens of onlookers. Ha ha ha. Laughter erupted from the side. Zhang Yi looked over and saw Commander Sane's face showing extreme excitement. He lifted the wine glass he was holding and gulped it down. So, the laughter resounded throughout the banquet hall again. The band also played music in time. People laughed and danced happily, surrounding Che Taiyuan and beginning to move rhythmically and chaotically along with him. Ha ha ha, ha ha ha. The happiness was shared by everyone, including the donkey, except Che Taiyuan. Zhang Yi also laughed, but inside, he just felt the scene was incredibly absurd. That night, Zhang Yi also received a wine glass that represented the identity of a member of the imperial household, and they played for the whole night. They played all kinds of ridiculous games. When the mood was at its peak, Commander Sane even told the red and blue flowers to strip naked and jump into the pool, squealing like pigs. He walked over, put his arm around Zhang Yi's shoulders, looked around with disdain in his eyes, and swept his fingers around the crowd. What do you think? Wasn't my banquet wonderful and exciting? Zhang Yi nodded. It really opened my eyes. I have never heard of such an exciting and spectacular dinner party, let alone seen it anywhere else. Commander Sane's face showed a smug expression. Of course, my banquet must be the best in the world. He patted Zhang Yi on the shoulder. Wu, you are a very interesting person. I like you very much. Tonight, of all the women here, if you fancy any of them, just let me know, and I can give her to you. Zhang Yi heard this and deliberately swallowed a mouthful of saliva, his gaze falling on those women. But then he shook his head. That's not a good idea. They all seem to have a name with a master. Hey, what's not okay? I said it's okay. You can take whichever one you like to the back right now. Zhang Yi licked his lips, revealing a lecherous look, and then, after hesitating for a long time, ordered 4 in one go. At this time, Choi Jae suddenly spoke up from the side. Wu, didn't you say you weren't feeling well today? Zhang Yi said with justification. That's because you don't know what's going on. I have other methods. Commander Sane laughed even harder. He had someone bring the 4 women over and arranged a room with a large bed for Zhang Yi. Zhang Yi was also very unceremonious, leading them over with lecherous eyes. He knew that this was also a test. After arriving in the room, he did the same thing again. Having already mastered the entire KG Kingdom network, Lu Karen tricked the surveillance, and Yang Xinxin then created an illusion for them. Zhang Yi sat by the window in the room, watching them wriggle and squirm on the bed like silkworm cocoons, but his heart did not waver in the slightest. They're having a great time, and we need to start moving too, he said to the shadow at his feet. Mu Yan, start searching the mansion according to the original plan. Mu Yan's ability to hide can reach its peak in the dark, and only a top-level mutant with space abilities like Zhang Yi can detect it. At this time, the top experts in the mansion are all protecting Commander Sane and a group of upper-class figures near the banquet hall, so it is actually easier to infiltrate other places. Without hesitation, Mu Yan immediately left the room along the crack in the doors, as previously discussed. Zhang Yi sat in the corner of the room and silently lit a cigarette. Ken Sane's madness exceeded his imagination. His model for humanity had reached the level of a monster. In his eyes, Zhang Yi saw a sense of inhumanity. This was perhaps inevitable. A being who had obtained supreme power through killing by force, and everyone must submit to his rule, would really believe that he was a god after a long time. And everyone else was a lower creature. Zhang Yi had once felt similar emotions, but because he was surrounded by the company of loved ones, elders and friends like Zhou Ke, Uncle Yu, and Fatty Su, he was able to retain his humanity. Therefore, he understood that once a person begins to lose their humanity, they become terrifying. It was precisely for this reason that he had to heavily rely on alcohol, crazy games, and playing with people's emotions in order to find the side of himself that belonged to humanity. Just now, for a split second, Zhang Yi had the urge to kill him. However, after considering the consequences, he did not do it. After I get the spear of Longinus, I will leave immediately. Let them sort out the mess in this place themselves. Zhang Yi muttered. But at this time, a voice sounded in his heart again. If there is no intervention from an external force, then this country will forever become the paradise of that madman. Zhang Yi retorted, "What does that have to do with me? I'm not in a position to shoulder the responsibility of saving a country. Besides, even if Commander Sane is eliminated, who can guarantee that the next one won't be even worse?" The voice continued, "No one can foresee the future. But if no changes are made, the cage will only remain forever." Zhang Yi suppressed this restlessness within him. After gaining great power, he also felt a sense of superiority and occasionally wanted to be a savior, for example. However, at the moment, he knew that he would be unable to defeat the opponent within the commander's territory, so he would not take any risks. The power of faith has been explained to us by the master of the underworld before. As long as the most devout believers make a wish in their hearts and concentrate a large amount of weak power on one person, it will produce a powerful effect. So, killing one person is equivalent to killing the power of 10,000 people. A hint of thought flashed in her eyes. Perhaps this represents the status quo of the future. In wars between races, the winners are determined by the top mutants who concentrate all the resources of the race. If the top mutants are defeated, the entire race will be destroyed. If 10,000 people survive, one person cannot escape. In fact, if one person dies, 10,000 people will not have a good ending. Dear viewers, thanks for staying with me. We'll try to get you more updates. Please like and subscribe and share the video with your friends. Love you all.